All right, so a couple of days ago on the channel, I made somewhat of a controversial video talking about how the video game crash of 2024 was indeed here. I cited some examples, I gave you guys my opinions on it, and really, I mean, at the end of the day, it is an opinion piece that I created. However, you guys seem to be really interested in that video. That video did absolute banger numbers, so first and foremost, thank you for watching it, thank you for interacting with the video, and even if you disagreed with it, like I said, you know, that's cool, because really at that time it was more so just my thoughts on the overall happenings within the video game industry. But since that video, we've actually had a lot of proof that sort of backs up my theories that I created in that video, and more importantly, I got some inside information on video game distribution that will absolutely shock you and sort of draw parallels to the original video game crash that happened in the United States back in 1983. So if you didn't watch the initial video, I highly suggest you watch that video first. I guess technically you could watch it after this, but there's some brand new information that I need to bring to the forefront with this because it paints a very interesting picture that doesn't sound very good. So first and foremost, let's get into some hardcore proof of things that have happened within the past few days. Tom Henderson over at Insider Gaming. Ubisoft stock tanks to a 10-year low after lukewarm Star Wars Outlaws launch. Now, I actually made a video on this yesterday talking about the situation in the UK, but I did say that there were some caveats with that. Obviously, the UK is just one specific region, and when you're talking about the UK, you know, we were only basing it kind of on physical sales, not any sort of digital sales. And obviously the digital forefront has become something that is very important within video games, but there are still retailers in the UK that are selling physical games, so you wouldn't expect it to do, you know, slightly better than a game like Avatar, which didn't have all of the hype and production value that Star Wars Outlaws had. Star Wars Outlaws is Ubisoft's most, you know, highest paid sort of advertising campaign. It's the most money that they've spent on an advertising campaign for a video game. So factor that in with the fact that it's using a Disney property, which of course costs a lot of money, as we've established with games like Spider-Man, and of course the fact that they probably want this game to sell 10 to 15 million at full retail price. If the stocks are already starting to take a hit, like, that's not a good thing. Now, I do understand stocks ebb and flow all the time because, I mean, I have some stocks. I understand how that works, and it could rebound very quickly. But to see such a large drop because of this one game isn't painting a very good picture for Ubisoft. But of course, we have to talk about layoffs as well, because layoffs are something that I talked about in my initial video, talking about all of the layoffs that we've seen in 2024, things like Visions of Mana, a game that just came out and now the studio is shutting down. But what about doing layoffs on a game that actually has not even released yet, but is still scheduled to release? Oh, well, we have something with that too, folks. Don't you worry your pretty little head. VGC reporting that the studio behind the PS5 and PC version of Until Dawn, meaning the remake slash remaster of it, so it doesn't have anything to do with the original version of the game, because, you know, this isn't coming to the PlayStation 4, but the studio behind the PS5 and PC version of Until Dawn has announced significant layoffs ahead of the game's release. Now, Until Dawn is actually one of my favorite PS4 games. So when it was announced to be getting an enhanced version for PlayStation 5, I was actually kind of interested in it. But then I thought to myself, well, it needs to be priced right. I actually said in a previous video, I need to see like a $40 price point for this, because they're not really doing much besides just upgrading the engine and making the game look prettier. However, if you play the PlayStation 4 version on your PlayStation 5, you do get resolution and frame rate enhancements in the game. So it's almost like kind of like a free sort of remaster thing. When you look at how, of course, other games have been ported from the PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation 5, there was a $10 upgrade path, to which if you had the PlayStation 4 game, you paid $10, you got the PS5 version. They're not doing this with Until Dawn. Actually, what they're doing is charging you $60 US for this game. This is just as egregious as Donkey Kong Country Returns HD for the Nintendo Switch. I will never stop bad mouthing that game, and I will never stop bad mouthing, you know, full priced things that are just graphical enhancements. If you're changing core mechanics of the game, you're adding in substantial content, not a Funky Kong, I can understand it. But when you're making a game that already exists, that already looks really good, and you're just making it look a little bit better, and you're not adding in any other sort of incentive, and there's no sort of upgrade plan when you could clearly do an upgrade plan, like, yeah, there's going to be more studio layoffs, a buzzword that we have heard all throughout of 2024, from big companies to small companies to everyone in between. There have been layoffs every single day, it seems like, in 2024 for the video game industry. Now, is that the sign of a healthy industry? Is that the sign of something that is thriving? Or is it a sign of something that is failing? Also yesterday on the channel, we of course, oh boy, we of course talked about Concord, because what an absolute disaster Concord ended up being. Because look, if you didn't catch my video yesterday, they're shutting down Concord now on September 6th, and they're going to try to retool it and figure it out, essentially probably try to make this game a free-to-play thing. Well, guess what, pal? That's not saving this game. You're not saving this game, Hermen Hulst. This should come out, some of this should come out of your salary, because you wasted 8 years, $250 million on a game that lasted literally 1 week. A game that nobody asked for. A game that nobody besides toxic positivity peddlers on social media really seemed to be interested in. Everyone around you was saying, hey, this probably isn't a great idea, but you went through with it anyways. You decided that you needed to buy Firewalk, and there's some questionable things happening at Firewalk as far as employees are concerned, but looking at the overall picture of this, this really was just a game nobody asked for, nobody wanted, and then you released it and it completely failed. Where is the accountability? Because you made this company continue to create this game and raise their budgets and stuff like that. Somebody needs to be held accountable, and Hermen Hulst, I believe, is the person that needs to be held accountable. Now, of course, with a game like this, there is the whole DEI, you know, the woke failure, stuff like that, and I want to talk about that too before we get into our final topic, which is going to absolutely blow your mind. Now, as far as that stuff is concerned, it's a very sensitive topic. Do I feel like stuff like that could have played a role in Concord? You know, to some degree, yeah. When you look at the roster of characters in Concord, I don't really think there's many characters that look very interesting or hero-ish for a 5-on-5 hero shooter. Now, of course, it seems like they focused more on the characters and building lore for the characters and giving the characters pronouns instead of like focusing on making a high-quality game that you plan on charging people. I think that did sort of impact some people's decisions not to pick up Concord, but you also have to look at it from a perspective of a lot of gamers aren't terminally online like you and I are. Like, people that watch this channel, they're rather informed about what's happening and what's going on, at least from my perspective. But a casual gamer doesn't know about the inner workings of the industry, doesn't really know about, you know, how this sort of stuff is being done. They're looking at it from a strictly game perspective, and the casual market wasn't interested in this game. The hardcore market wasn't interested in this game. The modern audience segment, they weren't interested in this game. There was no audience for this game. And I think even if you had, you know, characters that were a little bit cooler and you know, something that was more, you know, akin to what you expect to see in a hero shooter, and let's just call a spade here. Even if you stripped away all of the characters and their pronouns and stuff like that, I still don't think it makes for a good game. Because at the end of the day, a good game that's fun is the most important thing. It's not about the characters. It's not about this, that, or the other, or the story or something like that, although the story does play a role. To me, and this is just me speaking, you can feel differently, I don't care. As long as the game is really good, like, I don't really care that much about, you know, what character I'm playing as, especially in a multiplayer game. You get what I'm saying? In a multiplayer game, there's not really supposed to be a heavy story or anything like that. But Concord failed, dead. You're not saving this game. Free to play is nothing is going to save this game. You wasted all this money and all this time. Good job, video game industry. You're completely healthy. But I say all that, and those were just the recent examples. And I want to get into the information that I got yesterday, because the more I thought about this, I received a phone call from a friend. And the more I thought about this, the more it absolutely blew my mind. And this is on the video game distribution side of things, primarily focusing on physical games, because physical games, as you and I have been told, are slowly going the way of the dodo. You know, digital sales are up, even though if a game only releases digitally, that's accounted for in that as well. Like mobile games and stuff, they count all that in the digital versus physical thing. But digital sales are skyrocketing. Nobody's buying physical media. So we're going to this all digital age that all these companies want to push on you, because then they can control the market. But here's where things get very interesting. What is going on with the physical distribution of video games? Because it seems like there has been a massive change that nobody's talking about until now, because I have the information. As far as this individual told me, Ingram Entertainment is a company that you've probably never heard of before unless you own a mom and pop shop or you are a big box retailer. Ingram Entertainment was basically responsible for supplying most big companies with physical media, including video games. They had a long list of companies that worked with them, from companies like Nintendo to Sony and Microsoft to smaller companies, middleware companies, middle ground companies. All of this sort of stuff worked with Ingram Entertainment, and they were one of the largest distributors of physical media, including physical video games. They supplied not only mom and pop shops, but they did Walmarts, they did Best Buys, they did Targets, and so many more. I can't really comment on the other things, but if you're supplying Walmart and Best Buy with product, you're a big player in this. You are controlling the physical video game marketplace because you're working with these big companies, and these are the companies that are still selling physical games. Well, Ingram Entertainment actually shut down towards the tail end of 2023. In September 2023, the company announced its closure. So expenses are exceeding sales, so it's time to exit. And that was it. They closed up shop. So now you have this sort of gap that's happening with this. Now, another company came along called Allied Entertainment that is sort of filling the gap that Ingram Entertainment left when it comes to physical media. However, Allied Entertainment doesn't have nearly the same long client list as Ingram did. You still have your heavy hitters, your Nintendos, your Sonys, your Xboxes. But when it comes to smaller companies or middle of the road companies like a NIS America or something, or NIS, I don't know how you say it, the company that makes all the quirky JRPG stuff, Allied Entertainment actually doesn't have deals with them for physical distribution. Now, what's the point of me saying all of this? What is the point of Ingram Entertainment leaving the market, Allied kind of taking up the space, have to do with the video game crash? Think of the timeline with this. When did we start seeing places like Target and Best Buy start to phase out their physical media when it comes to video games? When did the video game sections start shrinking to a point of even completely disappearing? I believe it was the first part of 2024 when Ingram was out and Allied was in. You see what I'm getting at here? What was the cause for the video game crash of 1983? Retailers didn't want to sell video games anymore. And with this shift, now, once again, companies, retailers are not wanting to sell video games anymore. They're shrinking their things. Think about how when you walk into a GameStop, it's like 40% video games, 60% other crap. And it could be even more varied. It could be 25-75, depending on what sort of GameStop you have in your area. So what I'm saying with this is it's almost like physical media, even though there is still a place for it. You've seen time and time again, physical media sales do very well. When you restrict the amount of physical media that is out there, and when you shut down distribution chains and companies that are distributing to these retailers, these brick and mortar retailers, and you start to kill off that pipeline, well, what's going to happen? A large segment of people don't like digital purchases. Even the younger generations are starting to see the ramifications of digital purchases. If you were a little kid and bought a game on the Xbox 360, What are you doing with that game now? Do you still have access to that game, or has that game been pulled? So there still is a market for physical media. That's why limited run games exist in the space that they do, and they're making money hand over fist. But when you start to limit the distribution of video games, are people just going to automatically go to all digital, or are people going to buy less video games? Because there's not as many options to purchase them. You're forcing an all digital thing, and maybe, just maybe, the consumer doesn't want that. If this doesn't sound like a video game crash to you, I mean, I don't know what else you want. We've got studios laying off people at an alarming rate. Stocks plunging for major releases that have just come out. You've got video games. 8 years, $250 million. The biggest flop in video game history was a first-party Sony game. And Until Dawn's going to flop too. I'm going to go ahead and put that out into the universe. Until Dawn is going to flop. And that's why they're doing layoffs, because they know that this game is not going to sell. Unless you're putting that in PlayStation Plus on day one, that game is screwed. And even if you do put it on PlayStation Plus on day one, a lot of people got rid of PlayStation Plus when you jacked up those prices. And with the changing of physical distribution of video games and limiting it, and retailers getting out of the video game marketplace, what the hell do you expect to happen? This is a very volatile situation. That's not even taking into account the fact that games take too long to make and budgets are way too high and profit margins are razor thin, and you have to do things like microtransactions and DLC to hopefully make up some of that money, because you might be operating at a loss with this sort of thing. People see the gross revenue and oh, the video game industry is in a great spot. But gross revenue is not net. Did you take an economics class? There's a lot of factors going into these things. There's people that need to be paid. There's things that cost money with this. And I don't see this getting any better before it gets way worse. But these are just my thoughts on it. Maybe your thoughts are a little bit different. Let me know in the comments section down below, because I respect all opinions on here. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share. Be sure to check out the video from the other day talking about the video game crash. That kind of leads into this sort of thing, but you know, I guess you could watch this one by itself. I mean, you've already made it to the end of this video, so who am I to tell you how to consume your media? And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.